Good afternoon and welcome to the third concurrent session of the day, Hawks Psychology Software Demonstration. Our presenter today is Laura Shevlin with Hawks Learning. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. We're also giving away 3 $25 Amazon gift cards at the end of this session. To enter for a chance to win, please use the link in the chat to enter your name onto the prize wheel. And on that note, I will hand it over to Laura.
Thank you, Joanna. Let me go ahead and get started here and share my screen. Oops, just give me 1 second. All right, looks like we're good to go. Thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Laura Shevlin and I am an educational courseware representative here at Hawks Learning. Today my presentation will be on a psychology demonstration of the Hawks online software. So the first thing I wanted to start off with was just a little bit of background on Hawks and who we are as a company in case you're not familiar with Hawks. The first thing I wanted to highlight are the low cost of the psychology resources. So we did partner with OpenStax to develop these resources, and it has led us to price them very affordably for students. So you'll see the net price to the bookstore listed on this slideshow here. We do have an option for online access only. That would be the courseware plus the ebook for $40 net cost. And then we do have some additional bundling options with print resources if that's something you're interested in. So you can bundle in the print textbook or the guided notebook with the prices listed there. Keep in mind, this is just the net price to the bookstore. So you'll want to contact your bookstores individually to learn more about their markup rates. Another thing I wanted to highlight before we jump into the presentation is service and support, which is huge for us here at Hawks. So if you're unfamiliar and haven't experienced it yet for yourself, here are a few things that I was hoping you could walk away with knowing that we do. So the first and foremost here is our phone line. So we do have a company policy here at Hawks that when someone's calling in, a live person will answer the phone within the first 4 rings. And that phone number to our support line is going to be the same for both instructors and students. So if you or students ever have a question at any point, you can always give us a call and know that someone's going to be there to be able to answer that phone and help you through any of those questions. We never want you as an instructor to feel like you're conducting tech support for Hawks or answering Hawks related questions. So you can always send students our way if they have any questions about their accounts or anything like that. Next, we have a 24/7 live chat. So we do have regular phone hours, like I mentioned. Those are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. If a student is ever up late at night outside of those regular phone hours and still needs to get in touch with Hawks, we do have a live chat option that's available 24/7. So you or students can contact us outside of those normal phone hours. And the last thing I wanted to share here, just in relation to service and support, is our unlimited training. All of our training and support is free and unlimited here at Hawks. So we want to make sure everyone is confident, especially if you're a new user of Hawks, just adopting a new system in your course. So all of our training and support, not just at the beginning of the semester, but at any point throughout the implementation process. If you need additional training, we're here to support you. We also offer student training options if you feel like that would be beneficial to have a Hawks representative join your class on the first day of class and just kind of walk students through how to navigate Hawks and how to activate their access codes and anything like that. So just keep that in mind as well if you're open to exploring Hawks, that our service and support really is something that we take a lot of pride in. Next is connecting with students through Mastery. So I'll touch on this a little bit more throughout my presentation, but essentially Hawks uses a unique Mastery approach with our homework lessons. So I'll be able to show you more information regarding our Mastery approach when we get into the software itself, but just something to keep in mind that kind of separates us from a lot of the other online softwares that are out there. Next, I wanted to highlight a few Screenshots of what the guided notebook looks like. You might have noticed on the pricing page that that was a bundling option to include the guided notebook. This is an alternative work text that you can choose to pair with the online platform. It is a print resource. So I just wanted to highlight some of the elements that you would find within the guided notebook. Ideally, it was made to be paired with the online software and guide students through the note-taking process. We developed these guided notebooks really because we have heard so much feedback from instructors that oftentimes students in these introductory level courses might be struggling with soft skill development. So note-taking and study strategies, that type of thing. So it's an optional printed resource that you can choose to pair with the online platform. You'll see things like key terms, fill in the blanks, just some example level questions that students can fill out as they're reading through the content. There's no additional content found in the guided notebook. Like I said, it's completely optional to bundle, but if you'd like to request a copy to take a look yourself, you'll see those links later in the chat on how to get your hands on a copy of these. This is just another snapshot here of one of the elements from our guided notebook, this crossword puzzle. Again, just really trying to engage students as they're reading through that content and help them to make those connections right there on pencil and paper. Now we can go ahead and switch gears over to the student software. And so what I've pulled up here is the student side of our platform. So this is what students would see when they're logging into Hawks. Before I hop into a homework lesson here, I wanted to give you just a quick tour of the dashboard of our online software. So here on the left-hand side is our grades tab. This is where students can access their accurate and up-to-date grades with Hawks. We do sync directly with a couple different LMS systems that I wanted to mention in case that's something that you're interested in. Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Brightspace, and Moodle. If you wanted to set up grade syncing or student single sign-on options, that way students could access Hawks through your Canvas or LMS courses. To the right there, we have our ebooks tab. This is where the online version of the textbook will be housed. So this does come included within a student's purchase of an access code. So just something to keep in mind if you wanted to go with the courseware route, they'll always have access to that ebook at minimum. Another thing that does come included within their purchase of an access code is a lifetime license, which means that those access codes never expire. So students will have access to their Hawks course for life. And that does include new additions and updates. So they'll always have the most up-to-date version of that Hawks course once they've purchased. To the right here, we have our discussions tab with two drop-down features. First, we have our live chat. This is where you can instant message with students and hold things like virtual office hours or even Q&A sessions before exams. Just another avenue of communications with students outside of normal classroom hours. And then below that, we have a discussion board where you can post topics or questions for students and they can thread answers below. Jumping to the right here, we have our bell, which is our internal notification system. This will let students know of any upcoming items today on their to-do list or anything that might be overdue. To the right here, we have our envelope, which is our internal messaging system. This is where you can set up things like course announcements or send out messages to students. One thing you can choose to set up here are automated assignment reminders, which will send out automated alerts for students for any upcoming or overdue assignments, depending on how you want to set that up. So for example, if every 24 hours before an assignment is due, you want students to receive a personalized message from you, just reminding them to turn in their homework, that's something you can set up once at the beginning of the semester, and all semester long, students will continue to receive those personalized reminders from you. On this drop-down menu here, just a few things I wanted to point out. First and foremost is that live support that I mentioned earlier from my PowerPoint, that 24/7 live chat that students can always get in touch with a Hawks specialist here. Below that, we have a training video, which is just a good resource for students to become introduced to the courseware. Some instructors will show this on the first day of class just to get students acclimated to the Hawks system and make them aware of where all the resources are housed. Below that, we have a Give Feedback Win Prizes tab, which is just a fun way for us to encourage feedback from students who are in here using our system every day. At any point, they can submit their feedback to us here, and we do monthly drawings for gift cards for prizes. So just a fun way for us to collect feedback, and we do take their feedback into consideration when we make changes in the software. So that is the dashboard here, and down below, I'm able to see the courses that I'm enrolled in. I'm able to see my school, instructor, and section here, and a mini to-do list of my upcoming assignments. As a student, I can click directly on these assignments from this dashboard, or click on this blue View Course button, which will take me to my to-do list. So that's just a comprehensive breakdown of all of those upcoming assignments and due dates. You'll see here by default, everything is broken out by due date. So due today, due within a week, or due later. This is customizable for you as an instructor. So if you'd prefer to break these out by chapters or modules, you can absolutely customize it so that the order that the lessons appear in are custom to you. Clicking from the to-do list, I'm going to go ahead and hover over to lessons. This will whittle down to just the homework lessons pulled from that to-do list. So if there were other assignments in there like tests or quizzes or even projects that you've assigned, this will give students a big picture overview of what they have upcoming as well as those due dates there. I'm going to go ahead and click on an assignment in Hawks to show you what that looks like. So clicking on any lesson in Hawks will bring you to this same 3-mode learning path here: learn, practice, and certify. All of our homework lessons follow this same path, and I'll hop into each of these so you can see what it looks like for a student as they're navigating through their homework lessons. We'll go ahead and start here on the left-hand side within the Learn mode. So Learn is a multimedia presentation of the textbook. This is where all of the relevant textbook content is pulled from that textbook and the ebook. It's just broken out into smaller, more bite-sized pieces for students. So as you can see here, these 16 pages are what students will need to read through in order to be prepared to answer the corresponding homework questions. Now, there are a lot of multimedia resources kind of scattered throughout the Learn mode that I'll point out as we flip through. The first thing you'll see here is this flash forward button to our verified Quizlet set. So Hawks is a verified Quizlet creator, just so that you're aware. I know this is a widely used tool among students to refresh themselves on vocabulary terms and things like that. And, we've heard a lot of feedback from instructors just saying, it's really nice that students take the time to refresh themselves on these terms, but if they're studying something that's inaccurate or incorrect, it's not going to help them in the long run. So just know that we are verified and all of the content on here is vetted. So if students do want to use those Quizlet sets, they can. I'm going to scroll through a couple more pages here just to show you some of the other elements scattered throughout the Learn mode. We do have these on your owns where students can immediately start applying some of these concepts and checking their answers as they go. Some of these on your owns are printable as well. So if you ever wanted students to complete an on your own and maybe bring a printed version to class, that's a great way to incorporate participation or attendance or something like that. You'll also see things like reflection questions or group activity suggestions scattered throughout the Learn mode. These are things that you can absolutely pull out of the Learn mode and incorporate into class time. One thing that I've seen a lot lately, and I know every school is different with the hybrid and online, maybe returning in person, but you can pull these out. And if you're doing an online class, structure discussion questions around these reflection questions. Or if you're in person, just pull them up during class time in order to generate some of that classroom discussion among your students. We also have these concept videos you'll see within the Learn mode as well. So these are just videos to help put some of these concepts into perspective for students and help them connect them to their everyday lives. You will see some reflection type questions within the concept videos here as well, if you wanted to pull these into class time and kind of take a second to ask students about those questions in here. Sorry, I was scrolling trying to find it, but here we go, time for reflection. So just asking students these questions as they're watching the video, making them put these concepts into perspective of their everyday lives. Another thing I'll say about the Learn mode here is that it is customizable for instructors. So if there's anything in here that you don't necessarily cover in your course, you do have the option to hide these screens as a whole or tack on to the content that's available. So this example of a split screen here is just showing what it might look like if you had your own YouTube video that you wanted to embed directly in these screens. That way students wouldn't just see the Hawks content, but what you've built in as well. The last thing I wanted to highlight here is this watch button on the top left-hand side of the screen. This will pull what we call a lesson level video. It will give students an overview of all of the content that's covered here in these 16 pages in video format, and just a good resource for students who might consider themselves more auditory or visual learners. I will say closed captions are always available for all of our video resources within Hawks. I'm going to go ahead and pop out of the learn mode and head into that next mode of practice. Practice is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of a penalty-free environment for students to jump in and start answering questions without being penalized and before they're going straight to the homework portion. We do give students these algorithmically generated questions here to work through, as well as access to these learning aids down here at the bottom of the screen. I'll walk through each of those here briefly just to show you what that looks like for students. The first one here is the tutor button. So if a student got to a question and just had no idea where to begin, they can access Tutor and it will bring them to a helpful hint. A hint will usually contain relevant definitions or examples for students, or even prompt a student to ask themselves a set of questions to really put some of these concepts into perspective for them. These hints are just designed to give students a little push in the right direction if they're feeling stuck. And they're especially helpful if students are working on this outside of class and can't necessarily raise their hand and ask you, where do I get started on this particular question? Now from this screen here, if the hint isn't helping and students just truly feel like they might have missed something while they were reading the text, they can go directly back to that learn mode from this screen here, or click on solution to see the fully worked out solution and correct answer displayed there. So they can kind of check their work as they go if they're answering some of these questions and just want to know what that correct answer is there. Heading back to practice, we do have a send to instructor button. This is a feature that you can turn on or off for students. It essentially just allows students to take a screenshot of a question and send it to you directly. So if there's something that they're truly struggling on, or maybe want to chat through during office hours, you'll be able to see the exact version of the exact question. And I think this is really helpful too with psychology, just because there are so many different question types, having a student say that question about the restaurant was really confusing, but you might not know exactly what they were looking at. We also have a skip button here, allowing students to skip over questions and really just focus on question types that they feel like they're struggling on. We also have a try similar for students needing that extra practice on a particular question type. So if they want new versions of a similar question, they can click try similar over and over again to get that practice in. Now, I do want to take a moment to highlight these different question types available within the practice mode as well. So this one here is a click to select. We present students with a passage and we're asking them to identify different elements within the passage, and they can select those different sentences here in order to submit an answer. Now, I do want to go ahead and submit an answer here. It was asking me to pick a sentence that illustrates the just world hypothesis. And I wanted to get this wrong to show you the kind of feedback that students get when they're answering questions incorrectly within the practice mode. As a student, I can always click on explain error here. It's going to pull the exact question that I was just presented with and not only tell me that my answer was wrong, but tell me why my answer was wrong. So our system has artificial intelligence that anticipates and diagnoses common student errors that are made here within the platform in order to stop students in their tracks right away when they do make a mistake and let them know where they've gone wrong. So here it's telling me my answer was incorrect, but it goes on to tell me why, because it describes the life circumstances of Brian and Dallas rather than describing a belief about the world. So as a student in real time, when I do make a silly mistake, I can get that feedback, go back to practice and try again. We always tell instructors that this is the type of feedback that you would hope to give students if you were able to sit down with each single one of them as they're working through these practice questions. Heading out of here, oops, sorry, my Zoom was over there. Students can go back to the hint screen if they want a hint on this question, or go back to learn where that content was covered in the learn screens. And again, click on solution if they want to see the correct answer. But students will likely go back to practice, click try similar, and try again on a similar question type until their performance improves. Once students are feeling ready to hop into that homework portion here of the 3 modes, at any point they can exit out of practice and hop into Certify. And Certify is the credit-bearing portion of the 3 learning modes. So this is what students are completing for a grade within your course. Now you'll notice a couple key differences between practice and Certify that I'll go through with you, but I do want to say that the question types in Certify are very similar to what students just work through in practice. So if students did spend any time up front working through practice questions, that time was certainly not wasted. It will only better prepare them when it comes to answering the homework questions and spending less time in the Certify mode overall. Now, a couple key differences between the practice mode and Certify. First, you'll notice that we've removed those learning aids down here at the bottom of the screen. Students can no longer access that skip, try similar, the tutor, or send to instructor button. Ultimately, we just want to hold students accountable for demonstrating that they've actually learned the content here in the lesson and can prove that they've done so. At any point, we don't want students to become overly reliant on those learning aids. And we want to give them a good idea of what it is that they don't know, since these are considered lower stakes assignments. It's okay for students to make mistakes through the homework lessons. We just want to point that out to them here and let them know what they're struggling with before they get to that next test or quiz or paper in your course. And those tend to be higher stakes assignments, which can ultimately affect a student's grade more. Another thing that we do within the Hawks homework lessons is we utilize a mastery-based approach, like I mentioned earlier. What that means is we're asking students to reach a mastery level of these lessons at around 80% in order to achieve credit on their homework. And by credit, I mean 100% in the gradebook once they've reached or exceeded the mastery level of the lesson. As you can see here in this particular set, we've given students 10 questions. Of those 10 questions, they have a little bit of wiggle room, so that 2 inside the red heart indicates the number of questions that they can miss, and they're still within that mastery threshold. Now, let's say a student were to dip below the mastery level here and miss a third question in this set. Our system's going to take them out of Certify and place them back into the practice mode with a customized set of questions based on what they just missed in Certify. So our system will adaptively remediate, allowing students to go back into that penalty-free environment, focus on those question types that they're struggling on, while they can access the learning aids and the error-specific feedback that we just walked through. At any point, they can come back in and attempt that Certify lesson again. We're never going to block them out of Certify or take off points when they dip below mastery. They truly have unlimited attempts when it comes to those Certify lessons. We'll just give them a new set of questions back from the beginning to, again, really hold students accountable here for demonstrating mastery of these topics overall, since they'll need to later apply them in the course. Heading out of the Certify mode here, there are a couple more things within the student side that I wanted to highlight. The first is this web test tab. So outside of the homework lessons, you do have the ability as an instructor to create any additional type of assessments for students, including tests and quizzes. As an instructor, you'll have access to our full question bank to be able to build those types of assessments. And you'll also have the ability to build your own questions if you wanted to incorporate any of those on these assessments or in the homework lesson. But you will be able to assign any of those tests or quizzes through Hawks, and they would be found here underneath the web test tab. There's always the option to do pencil and paper and print those tests that you create as well within the instructor gradebook. One thing that students have access to all on their own that will help them prepare for these upcoming assessments is found under this practice web test button. When students click on create practice web tests, it will allow them to access everything that's available in the course, and they can build their own practice test or study guide to help prepare for those upcoming assessments. So as a student here, I can name it, I can set the number of questions I'd like, I can even time myself if that's something that I really struggle with. And then here I'm able to see all of the different chapters and lessons in order to add those in and really build a custom study guide for myself. Just going to add in a couple here and click start. And then it will generate that practice test for me to work through. Now, one thing that's really nice about this practice web test feature is that it functions almost identically to an instructor created web test. So as a student, if I'm coming here and spending time creating practice tests for myself, when it comes to test time, I will not be surprised at all. Students can skip around on questions just as they would with a pencil and paper test here. They can click on the question number on the top left-hand side of the screen and skip around that way to see what they have and have not yet answered. And I'm going to go ahead and just answer a couple of questions here just to show you the kind of feedback that students get once they do submit a test here. And as a student, if I'm ever feeling anxiety about the time ticking and staring at me, I can always hide the time in the top right-hand side of the screen. All right. Let's see. I'll go ahead and submit. And for today's purposes, it's okay that my test wasn't complete. And then I'm brought to this page here, and I'm able to see a really nice breakdown on how well I did on that practice test. So here on the left-hand side in this pie chart is my overall performance. I can see the percentage of questions I got correct and incorrect, just giving me a good idea on how well I would have performed if my instructor created that test and assigned it to me. And then here on the left-hand side is a breakdown of my performance by lesson. So it's showing me each lesson I used to compile and create that test. Visually, as a student, I'm able to see the areas where I'm performing well in here with the green, and those areas of red where I just might want to dedicate a little more study time to. As a student, I can not only see those areas of red, but I can actually click on them in order to get more practice questions within that lesson. So again, just that idea of students being able to practice over and over again as many times as they need to in order to be prepared for those higher stakes assignments within the course. Heading back here, I can end this practice session, hop into another one by clicking on that bar chart, or I can review or retake my practice test here. Heading back to my course, just a few more things that I did want to point out here. We do have a materials tab. This is where you can upload additional resources that you'd like to house in Hawks. So if you had PowerPoint slides, an online version of your syllabus, links out to other websites, you can absolutely house those here within the online platform so that students kind of have access to everything in one place. One thing I did want to highlight here within the software, we do have a standalone companion site as well that is linked within the materials tab. This will send you to our companion site that contains our chapter projects, Quizlet sets, and links out to other resources. And this is just nice because it compiles everything kind of in one place, but we do have chapter projects that correspond with each chapter of the book if you wanted to incorporate more project-based learning into your courses. Those Quizlet sets that I mentioned are broken out here by chapter, and then just links to other resources. So some of these are scattered throughout the Learn mode, just links out to different TED Talks or external websites that are relevant to the content that students are learning. If you wanted to kind of go through these and incorporate them into class time, that's always an option as well. The last thing I really wanted to share here is kind of switching gears over to the instructor side of the platform. So I've logged in here to my instructor dashboard, and I'm going to click on a psychology course because I want to show you kind of on the flip side as an instructor, how you can track where students are spending their time in the course and all of the reporting and analytics tied to the Hawks platform. So I'm going to go ahead and open up our assignment reviewer tool in order to show you this. So this is something that you would have access to as an instructor, and the assignment reviewer tool is one of my favorites because it's comprehensive in that it gives you kind of this big picture bird's eye view of how well your class is doing overall, and you can even kind of compare section to section, you know, as they're progressing through the course. But this tool is really flexible in that it allows you to whittle down to individual students, their personal scores, which questions they're missing, and how long it's taking them to complete those homework assignments. That way you can really intervene at any points when you see any at-risk students using this tool. So I will say this tool can be used for homework lessons or for any tests and quizzes that you assign through Hawks. But the first thing you see here is just the submission status bar graph, asking, you know, are students completing these assignments and if they're being done on time or overdue. Down below, I'm able to see a breakdown of how long students are spending in the courseware overall. So in my sections, are students certifying and how long are they spending within each of those modes? If I'm curious about a particular section, let me see here if I can switch sections so I can get some data for you. There we go. So if I'm curious about a particular homework lesson, I can actually click on that lesson name and it will give me more detailed student data here. So I'm able to see overall which students are mastering those lessons here and which ones aren't. So I can sort by students who are not yet mastered in those lessons. And then I can take a closer look at where they're spending their time within those 3 learning modes that we went through. So here you can see my first student, Kate, has attempted her homework lesson twice, but has not certified. And I'm able to see that she didn't actually spend any time up front within the Learn mode. And I always joke with instructors, you know, you'll always have those students coming to you saying, oh, I worked on the homework for hours last night. I could not certify. And this tool is really nice to be able to see, okay, well, where are you spending your time within the courseware? And are you using that time wisely? You can actually click on a student's name in order to review their Certify attempts with them as well. This is a great tool for office hours if you wanted to go through each question that students are missing, that they truly just aren't getting. And it might be that those one or two questions that are stopping them from certifying in that lesson. So you can see which questions a student got correct and incorrect and really go through that with them from there. The next part of this tool is one of my favorites. It's the analytics tab, and this will give you insights into the most commonly missed questions among your students. So here you're able to see which questions students are missing or struggling with and trends based on those questions. Is this something my entire class just isn't getting? So here, the first thing you'll see is this bar chart, just an item analysis of which questions in that lesson students are missing and the percentages of students who got them correct or incorrect. One of my favorite things about this tool here for the analytics tab is that it is anonymous. So this is something that you could absolutely pull up during class time and dedicate that first 5 minutes of class with students to going over some of these questions. For example, if you took a look here and said, whoa, 100% of you missed question 5 last week, you can actually click on that question name and it will generate a similar question type that students were presented with. That way you can really intervene at those points where students just aren't getting something and tailor your class time around that. It's really nice that all of these reports kind of automate that for you as an instructor, so you know exactly what topics to cover and where to intervene based on those points that students just aren't getting within the software. And then
Laura,
down
I'm sorry
below,
to interrupt, but just wanted to give you a quick 10-minute warning to make sure we have some time for questions at the very end.
perfect, thank you. Down below here, you can just see some additional data about those question types. So the difficulty level of the questions and the average amount of time spent on that. But that's really everything that I wanted to share with you. And it looks like we are right about at a perfect spot for questions. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and type those into the Q&A box down below, and we'll be able to address those. And I'm happy to, share anything on these screens again if there's anything we need to go over.
All right, so we do have a few questions for you here, Laura, but before we jump into those, I do want to give a quick reminder to everyone. The link to enter to win one of the 3 $25 Amazon gift cards is available in the chat. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to enter to win. We will be spinning the prize wheel right after the Q&A session. All right, so the first question we have here is how long do students get access for? So could you remind us of the access period for Hawks?
Yep, so students receive lifetime licenses with all of their purchases of an access code. So that's theirs for life. And like I mentioned earlier, if you joined late, that access code and lifetime license includes new additions and updates. So students will always have the most up-to-date version of that course that they've purchased.
Excellent. Could you remind us of the temporary access period as well?
Yes, good point, Joanna. We do offer 20 days of free temporary access for students. That way everyone on day 1 of class can get started and students aren't falling behind, especially those waiting on financial aid or anything like that. And that is an option whether you do LMS syncing and student single sign-on or just going through the Standalone website. We always offer that 20 days of free temporary access to all students, no matter how they're accessing Hawks.
Excellent, thank you. And another question here, do you provide any training for instructors or students?
Yep, so in the beginning, I shared a little bit about our training and support team. Every school has a training and support representative that's there to be their go-to person in order to make them feel comfortable, with any type of training or questions that come up. We provide instructors with training for their online gradebooks, and we can always do this in a group format if this is something that's coordinated across the department. One thing I will say too is that we didn't get to see much of the gradebook today, but the instructor gradebook is set up in a very templated format That way it makes it very easy to share across instructors. So if this is a coordinated course in your department and you guys want to keep consistency in homework lesson due dates or tests and quizzes, it's very easy to share pieces of your gradebook with one another. And again, our training and support team is always happy to help you set up your course in Hawks and make any customizations that you'd like in order to make the course align with what you're teaching and the content you're covering.
Great. So next question is, if I want to assign, say, a writing assignment or an open-ended question to my students, I give them a prompt, we're going over a concept in class, and I would like that to all be online in Hawks. Is there a way to accomplish that?
Absolutely. So we do have a discussion board option. If you wanted to kind of create group discussion among your students, they'll be able to thread and respond to others within the class. And that was one thing I pointed out to some of those reflection questions and things scattered throughout the Learn mode, or even some of those additional resources found on our companion site. Those would be great things to just create discussion questions around in order to get that kind of open-ended forum going with your students.
Would you be able to also share a little bit about our Smart Review tool and Question Builder tool and how those may be options as well?
Yep, absolutely. So we do have a Smart Review tool available in here, and it's kind of a all-in-one writing submission platform, and it's more commonly used within our English titles, but we have seen a lot of psych instructors utilizing this tool to create a wide variety of writing assignments, whether it's just answering one or two discussion questions or responding to a video. You can have students submit a writing submission to you as an instructor, or there's an option for peer reviews assignments. So if you wanted to get students doing peer review assignments or giving feedback to their peers based on those discussion questions, that's a tool that you can utilize within Hawks. That's always an option if you have a lot more, writing type assignments within your psychology course. We also have a question builder tool that I mentioned earlier when it comes to creating your own questions, whether it's for tests, quizzes, or homework assignments. So you always have that option in Hawks to customize and create your own questions and utilize them how you'd like. And like Joanna mentioned, you can use those open-ended formats with that question builder tool. So there are a lot of flexible options when it comes to creating your questions, and you can utilize those how you'd like within the Hawks software through tests, quizzes, or homework lessons.
Thanks, Laura. And just one last question. If an instructor here would like to know more about our psychology materials or get access to them right away, what's the best way for them to do that during the conference?
Yeah, so if you want to swing back by the Hawks booth, that is where all of our reps are going to be giving quick demonstrations kind of all conference long, and we'll be able to match you up with your Hawks rep if they're available. So if you just want to tell the booth host, what school and what state you're coming from, they'll be able to match you up with your Hawks rep. And if they're not available, we'll always be reaching out, after the conference. There are a lot of links within the bookshelf to request your own copies or gain access to your own online account. So if you have interest in filling out any of those types of forms, your Hawks rep will also be in touch just to make sure you're getting everything you need as far as the materials requested and online access your way.
Great. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that information. I also want to let everyone know that there will be another session diving into a different angle of our psychology materials later today at 4 o'clock in this room. Our psychology content specialist, expert Corey Eno, will be presenting on digital learning, a constructive approach to reaching today's psychology student at 4 o'clock in this room. So if you are interested in learning a bit more of the background on the product and ways that it can be used in a psychology course, feel free to join us at that time as well. So that is all the time we have for questions for now. So thank you again, Laura, for sharing all of that valuable information with us. We appreciate it. So we are going to